What's up, film fans? I'm Jared Poirier, and welcome to my movie review show where I talk about movies. So this is going to be like a 2018 catch-up video, and call me a grandpa for talking about films that came out for 2018 when it is now very clearly 2019. But there were a lot of very interesting films that came out in 2018, and I didn't get a chance to talk about every single one of them. So in this video, we're going to be covering 5 films: Upgrade, BlacKkKlansman, Apostle, Isle of Dogs, and Ready Player One.
If you're like Garrison Newkirk and you're watching this video just to find out what I thought of Ready Player One, then you're gonna have to wait till the very end because I'm gonna cover that movie last.
Okay, so let's start with Upgrade. And what happens in Upgrade? Well, basically, Upgrade takes place in the future where this guy who becomes a paraplegic gets a rare opportunity to have basically some type of biotechnology implanted at the base of his skull that is going to give him the use of his limbs again. I was impressed by how this movie managed to remain original despite kind of using a concept that's been done quite a few times. And the first thing that I want to talk about is the main character, Gray, played by Logan Marshall Green. I thought that this character was really well written. I thought that it was a good idea to make him very pathetic and make him a character that you can really empathize with. I thought that it was also a great idea to make this character a Luddite. He's somebody that's not a big fan of technology, and he talks about how technology is basically replacing people, causing people to lose their jobs, and it's a very good idea to basically take a character like that and then you give him a robot implant that's going to simultaneously solve a whole bunch of problems for him, but also cause him a bunch of problems as well. And I thought that Logan Marshall Green gave a very good performance here, and I especially admired his physical acting. Before he gets his tech enhancements, he's very kind of slouched over and doesn't have a lot of confidence with his body. But when he becomes a cyborg, he stands up much more straight and he has a much more confident posture. And this really helps to sell the idea that his body is being inhabited by another consciousness. So what are some other things that I liked about Upgrade? Well, I also thought that this film had really good cinematography. There are actually some shots used in this movie that I have never seen before, particularly one shot when the camera does like a full-on flip and then flips again into a transition. I was really impressed by shots like that. What are some other things that I liked about this movie? This movie has some really good foreshadowing. The gore effects in this movie are very impressive. Other stuff, the soundtrack is really good. I thought that the sound design was really well done as well. This movie is also incredibly well paced. I don't think that there was a single moment that I got bored watching this film. The plot moves along very briskly, and there's a lot of progression as well. I also thought that this movie built tension incredibly well, and thematically this movie was definitely making me think about some of the moral implications of certain military technologies, such as drones and nuclear weapons. I also thought that this movie was incredibly good at evoking emotions in the audience. In certain moments of this movie, I felt a very palpable sense of fear. There's other moments in this film that are very depressing, and other moments still that give you a real sense of catharsis. And yeah, I think the thing that I liked most about this movie, although it does have some really good effects and some very creatively shot action scenes, the thing that I love the most is how this movie subverted my expectations at pretty much every turn. Because let's be honest, this type of premise has been done before. This movie could have easily been a retread of something like RoboCop or something like Ghost in the Shell, but I think that this movie really staked out some territory of its own. And just when I thought that this film was going to be a basic twist on kind of a generic revenge plot, which would have definitely been enough, this movie throws in a twist ending, and I'm not going to spoil that here, but it really recontextualizes the entire film. So yeah, Upgrade, it's an excellent movie, some really good action, some good effects, very creatively shot, and above all, subverts a lot of cliches and really subverted my expectations. So check this one out.
If you're Jerome Latimer and you're waiting for me to cover Isle of Dogs, that one's gonna be second last.
Okay, so next up, we have a film that I actually missed in theaters that I was actually really glad that I ended up catching up on, and that film is BlacKkKlansman. And in this movie, a black dude named Ron Stallworth and Kylo Ren are cops who infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan. But here's the kicker. Every time Ron Stallworth goes to visit the Klan in person, it's Adam Driver. But every time that the Klan talks to Stallworth on the phone, it's actually John David Washington, who is definitely black, afro and everything. And truly, I think that what Spike Lee's done here is masterful. Spike Lee has delivered a very emotional and very thought-provoking film that also manages to be very funny and very entertaining. When it comes to the cast, I thought that Washington and Driver in particular both delivered really great, nuanced performances. Actually, I think that I could say that I liked all of the performances in this movie. And when it comes to this film BlacKkKlansman here, like, yes, this film is obviously very political, but I didn't find that it tried to shove any ideology down your throat. Really, it just provides some context and makes you think about current events in a new light. And above all that, it was a really entertaining and surprisingly funny film. So I would say that this is one of the year's best, and this is one of the most vital films of 2018. One thing that I will say is that there is a bit of footage at the end of this film, and let's just say that it appears kind of randomly. Don't get me wrong, I understand why Spike Lee decided to include this, because it helps to ground the film and relate it more to current events. I don't know, maybe there would have been a better way to do that. But regardless of that, this film is excellent, and I highly recommend checking it out.
If you're a fan of Gareth Evans and you want to know what I thought about Apostle, that review's coming up right now.
Okay, so next, we're going to be talking about a Netflix movie. And I know that some film fans shudder at the mere thought of this idea, a movie that was created for Netflix. But I honestly think that this might be the direction that cinema is going. Like it or not, Netflix is here to stay, and we're going to see more of this type of thing. And you know what? I actually think that it's a good thing that Netflix is creating an opportunity for these up-and-coming directors to get their vision realized and get their films made. But let's get into Apostle here. So what is Apostle about? Well, basically you have this guy whose sister gets kidnapped by a cult, and then he has to go to an island and try to save her. And in order to do that, he has to basically pretend that he's a member of the cult, and he discovers that there is a lot more going on with this cult than he originally thought. And going into this movie, guys, I'm a big fan of this director, Gareth Evans. I was absolutely astonished by his films like The Raid and The Raid 2. And what did I think about this movie? Well, let's start with the good stuff. I really thought that this film was well shot. There's a lot of interesting cinematography in this movie. I really respected that this movie was shot on site, at least in some capacity. They really did leave the studio, go to a location and shoot, which is oddly kind of a rare thing these days. There's some decent acting in this movie, some good world building, some really good set design. This movie creates a lot of suspense, and honestly, it had me very intrigued throughout a lot of the film. So yeah, suffice it to say that the idea for this film is really good. You've got a main character with a lot of personal investment infiltrating this cult, and there's a lot more spooky, Lovecraftian stuff going on behind the scenes than you might realize. So all the ideas are there. The problem with this movie is unfortunately the execution. And I say unfortunate because at the end of the day, I found this film really disturbing and disgusting. There's a point in this film where, unfortunately, it just devolves into torture. And I'm the type of guy that really likes horror movies, guys, and I can even tolerate some gore if it's done in a certain way, but in this movie, it just disgusted me. And in addition to all of that, this movie is way too long. It's like 2 hours long. Compare that to something like The Witch, which is a similar type of horror movie period piece. That movie is only an hour and a half long, and that's a movie that I really admire. And yeah, too bad, guys. Despite all the intrigue and all of the suspense, this movie just turned out gross. And this movie honestly really disappointed me in Gareth Evans, and I'm not going to be watching his new film, The Night Comes for Us, and I don't think I'll be watching any more of his movies so long as he's making these torture movies. Sorry, but it's just not my thing.
What is it, puppy? Zach Pope fell down the well?
Wes Anderson made a movie about dogs, and it's terrible.
Okay, so we might as well get into it. Let's talk about Isle of Dogs. Basically, the Japanese government decides to ban all the dogs and they send them to an island full of trash. There's this one kid who doesn't want his dog to be on the trash island, so he goes to the trash island to get the dog. And there's a bunch of other dogs on the island, and irony ensues. And honestly, guys, I was really excited to see this film. I love stop motion animation, and I've even liked some of Wes Anderson's previous movies like Grand Budapest Hotel. But with this movie, I was just so disappointed. In fact, I kind of hated this movie. And the more I think about this film, the less I like it. So here's the thing about this movie. I don't know how you can get such talented actors like Bryan Cranston and Edward Norton and Scarlett Johansson and just have them deliver their lines totally deadpan throughout the entire movie. Like, I don't know if this is really the actor's fault or Wes Anderson's fault. Maybe he just should have got professional voice actors to do this instead of just really famous actors that don't have a whole lot of experience doing voiceover. In regard to the animation though, I do of course always admire all of the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into producing a stop motion animated feature. And although there are some really impressive sequences, a lot of this movie takes place in like really gray, really depressing environments. A lot of this movie happens at the dump. And these gray environments, combined with the deadpan acting and the ironic presentation of everything, really made this film one that was difficult to attach to. Really, throughout this film, I felt nothing. I felt no emotion whatsoever. I wasn't attached to any of these characters. There aren't even really any characters in this movie that I liked. And it's a real shame because I can see that a lot of artistry and a lot of really hard work went into making this movie, but ultimately this movie just bored me. I felt like this movie was really pretentious and it just made me feel like I was being talked down to. So yeah, obviously I did not enjoy this movie, but there's quite a few people out there saying that they liked it. So I don't know, maybe if you're a big fan of stop motion and a big fan of Wes Anderson, then go ahead and watch this. But overall, I just found it pretentious and boring. Oh well.
All right, it's time to talk about Ready Player One.
So in this movie, a game developer has built a video game that's basically like the most epic role-playing game combined with the internet. There's this big corporation, IOI, that's trying to control the game, which is called the Oasis. And it's up to our protagonist, Wade Watts, played by Ty Sheridan, along with his love interest and his best friends, to basically save the Oasis. So what did I think about this movie? Well, honestly, I liked this movie. This is a movie that I really enjoyed, but it's far from a perfect film, and I'm gonna get into why. So first of all, creating this type of movie when you take so many elements of pop culture, so many characters, so many worlds, and try to smash them all together into a coherent movie, yeah, this is a very ambitious project. Some might say that creating a movie like this is crazy to even attempt. So why did I like this movie? Well, fortunately, this movie is more than just a pile of references, although it is also that. But beyond all that, Ready Player One really is just an entertaining movie that's fun to watch. And I also thought that this movie, despite its flaws, had a lot of heart and characters that I really cared about. I also really enjoyed that the way that this movie depicted the Oasis really made me think about some real world issues of like corporate control of the internet, things like net neutrality and stuff like that. Like when Wade is talking about how when people lose their shit in the Oasis, basically like lose the items that they've accrued in the game, how they lose their shit in real life and they'll even try to commit suicide. And believe it or not, that is kind of like how it is with games like World of Warcraft and League of Legends. Games where people spend so much time and money accruing items within the game. If you were to lose all of that, it would be very upsetting. But beyond that, yeah, going into this movie, I was aware of some of the criticisms that are present for this film. Obviously, this movie's been out for a little while, but watching this movie, I found myself liking it enough and being engaged enough that I was able to overlook some of the dumber stuff that, don't get me wrong, is definitely in this movie. For instance, yeah, a lot of the references are surface level, but I think they kind of have to be for this film to even be somewhat accessible for people who don't know everything about every part of pop culture. And there are a few deeper movie and video game references. The fact that everybody uses different hardware to access the Oasis is something that people have drawn critical attention to. Like how some people have a full-on suit so their body can feel everything that happens, whereas other people just have like Nintendo Power Gloves and a treadmill. Yeah, I get that that didn't make perfect sense. That wasn't totally logical. But also the way that I kind of thought about it is when you play video games, everybody's not playing using the same hardware. Some people use a mouse and keyboard, some people use a joystick, others use a controller, so I just thought about it that way and it didn't bother me. There are also some people saying that the love interest in this movie, Olivia Cooke as Artemis, was basically like a trophy for Wade Watts, and I didn't really see it that way. She had a lot of character development of her own. She was really her own character, and she had her own reasons for the things that she does inside and outside of the Oasis. And this is where I stop making justifications for this movie, and I acknowledge some of the dumb stuff. And one big one is that in some of the way more serious moments in this movie really fails. There's some serious moments where this film, for me, fell flat on its face. Pretty much everything about Wade's life at home didn't really have any effect on me. That whole bit didn't really work. There's other stuff that I can't really get into without spoiling, but there are some major conveniences in the plot. So yeah, there's definitely some dumb moments in this movie, some moments that were supposed to be very serious and very emotional that just didn't land, but I would say that there's more of it that works than doesn't. Another thing that I was really wondering while I was watching this movie, I was like, yeah, I'm enjoying this, but I'm someone that does like video games and does like pop culture and all that type of stuff, so I'm someone that can enjoy it, but what about someone that doesn't have that background and those interests? Is this film going to be something that they can enjoy? And I can really just speak from personal experience here, but I know that my girlfriend Masha doesn't know everything about pop culture, and she doesn't follow pop culture the same way that I do, but she really enjoyed watching this movie with me as well. So to sum it up, I was really entertained by this movie. I was compelled by this movie. I was invested in this movie. I was impressed by this movie. Yeah, it had some dumb stuff and some beats that didn't land, but I still think that this is a good movie, and I think that you should check it out. Alright guys, so that's going to be it for this video, but before I go, I also have a bit of a special announcement for you guys. If you guys haven't had enough of me talking about Isle of Dogs, I'm going to be doing another video on that movie, except this time it's going to be a live video. So my buddy Tom Ward, who really disagrees with me on this movie, let me tell you, he is going to be coming on my channel, and we're going to really hash it out. We're going to have probably a bit of a lively debate, let's say, about Isle of Dogs. So that is going to be January 19th. Tom Ward is going to be coming on the channel, Movie Nerd Live, 4 p.m., and we are going to be talking about Isle of Dogs. But yeah, guys, that's going to be about it for now. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.